Welcome to From the Carmel, This is Moriah, a podcast produced by Moriah Congregation in Haifa, the oldest conservative or Masorti congregation in Israel, where on this podcast we will be exploring Jewish life, community, identity, and the stories that shape our congregation, the city of Haifa, and the issues of concern to the Masorti community here in Israel. We'll also be talking to some of you, our friends abroad, about our relationships. I'm happy to host on this podcast, number 2, by the way, in the series, if you're counting, Rabbi Matti Schultz, the spiritual leader of Kehilat Moriah, who, as luck may have it, will be marking his 1-year anniversary as our rabbi in just a few weeks. Originally from Boston, Rabbi Schultz's journey took him from American Jewish life and rabbinical studies at Hebrew College in Boston to the Carmel Mountain here in Haifa, where he now leads Israel's oldest and, I would like to say, also one of the most vibrant conservative congregations in Israel. So in this episode, we'll be talking about Rabbi Matti, as he prefers to be called here in Israel, his personal journey to the rabbinate, his move to Israel, the challenges and opportunities of leading a synagogue community in the modern state of Israel, and the evolving relationship between conservative Judaism in America and the Masorti movement here in Israel. Most importantly, we'll get to know the person behind the pulpit, no pun intended, his values, his experiences, and his vision for Jewish life today, and for what he envisions for our community in the future. Welcome to the podcast, Rav Matti. How are you?
Thank you very much, Eitan.
So, let's start. Just tell us a little bit about, for our listeners and viewers, because this is actually the first time that we're also conducting a video podcast. So, who is Rav Matti Schultz? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Who is Rabbi Matti Schultz? I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts. As you mentioned, I'm from the Boston area. We were sort of the typical portrait of American Judaism in some ways, going to shul a couple of times a year, Passover Seder, but with sort of large gaps in between in terms of our Jewish engagement. I went to Sarah Lawrence College for my first degree. I studied creative writing and literature. And it was really in college that I started deepening my understanding of my Jewish heritage and deepening my Jewish practice also. When I was at Sarah Lawrence, I spent a year abroad in Israel, completely fell in love with this place, and after I graduated, moved back. And then I was in Tel Aviv for about 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, doing all the things that Olim Chadashim do, which is you.
I don't remember. So tell me, what do Olim Chadashim do when they come to Tel Aviv?
Well, I meant professionally. I waited tables. I waited tables, and I worked at a preschool for a couple of years, and I was also a freelance writer working for a Jewish newspaper based in the States for a while after that.
Okay, we'll get to the Israel experience a little later on, but tell me, Rav Matti, was there a specific moment in your childhood, for instance, when Judaism became personal to you? Did you think of a career? I mean, you said you went to Sarah Lawrence, but that's not a rabbinical school. But was there a time when you said Judaism is really something that I want to get into? I want to explore the religion even deeper than maybe what I got at home?
I think the moment for me, and it may sound counterintuitive, but the moment that set me on the path to becoming a rabbi was the moment in high school, or maybe it was even earlier in high school. It might have been in junior high, something like that, when I went up to my dad and I said, "I'm not coming with you this year to Yom Kippur. I don't believe in this stuff. I don't get it. I don't buy it. It's not for me." And
was your household a conservative household, or was it a reform household? Or did it not define itself in those ways?
We went to a reform temple. and yeah, I was on a spiritual journey. I was looking for answers to big questions, and I hadn't found them at Hebrew school. So I told my dad, this isn't for me. Have fun this year. I'm not coming. And I had a very liberal, accepting parents, so I didn't think this was going to be an issue.
Yeah.
I thought my dad would say, "Okay, vaya con Dios, be go find your path, and I love you, and I accept this." But he that was not the reaction.
Okay.
The reaction was, "No matter what, you are a Jew. You think you can get out of this? You think you can opt out? You are a Jew." So then the question became, okay, if I'm a Jew, no matter what does that actually mean? And that began a process of looking into that question. And I guess that's what I've been doing ever since, is looking into that question. But I don't think if I hadn't had that moment of rebellion, I don't think I would have ever gotten close later, which is why I always feel with the four sons of Passover that you have to hit all four in your life.
You
It's
said that you
common.
you said that you obviously went to a very liberal arts college in Sarah Lawrence, and and you said that when you came to Israel, you were waiting tables. You did some freelance work for a Jewish newspaper in the States, I think. But
Mhm.
what did you? How did you envision your future when you were in college? What did you think you were going to? What kind of career path did you set out for yourself?
I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to. I think when I was in high school, I pictured my future as a novelist. When I was in college, I started writing more nonfiction. And when I was living in Israel, I published a book of nonfiction, a
Really?
book of literary essays. That sort of, it deals a lot with Jewish text and with midrash and with various forms of Jewish creation stories. And over the years, my writing has stayed focused on what I consider to be big, captivating Jewish questions.
So you moved to Israel, um, take one, so to speak.
Mhm.
You moved to Tel Aviv. You had the odd jobs. Um, this was obviously something that as you said, your gap year or your year abroad from university really brought you closer. What were your as an Oleh Hadash? What were your early impressions of Israel, of Tel Aviv? This is back when this is in early 2000s, if I'm doing the math correctly.
What were my early impressions of Tel Aviv?
Of Israel, Tel Aviv, yes.
Uh, so
And
as I said,
still at that time, you're still a secular reformed Jew or reformed Jew slash
mm,
secular living in Tel Aviv, one of the most secular cities in the world, probably. You're still not. You still don't have the rabbinical bug. Is that a fair assessment?
yeah, that's true. I think rabbinical school is something I thought about in college as I was going deeper and deeper into Jewish practice and Jewish identity. Actually, moving to Israel, I'm sure this is not atypical at all, but I became less observant when I moved to Israel.
That happens
For
to a lot of us.
Yeah, it,
Yeah.
there were a couple of reasons. Number one, um, the hegemony of orthodoxy here. Quite frankly, as a gay practicing Jew, I didn't know where I fit into the religious landscape here, and it was easier to disconnect. And also, I found that living in Israel, speaking Hebrew, being in Tel Aviv in this Hebrew city, fulfilled in some way uh, a sense that I was still living a Jewish life.
Okay.
For instance,
Which is what a
uh,
lot of us feel as well, living here in Israel. That we
yeah,
don't necessarily have to be Jewish in order to feel Jewish, if you know what I mean.
I think there's something very mystical and profound about one of my early Yom Kippur's in Tel Aviv, seeing the entire city shut down, the streets flood with children on bikes.
Bicycles, right?
Um, and I joined them. I ran downstairs. I got on my bike. I spent my whole day just exploring the roads on my bike, and it holy to me. It felt uniquely Jewish because it couldn't happen in any other setting.
Okay, so this is a really interesting thing that we're talking about here, because here you are, you're moving to Israel, living in the most secular city in Israel, pretty much. You're living here for 10 years. So when do you get that burning bush moment where you say, wait a second, um, to borrow something from a different religion, I think I have a calling. When does that happen to you, and how does that hit you?
I think sort of halfway through my Tel Aviv years, I realized that the whatever answer to my Jewish identity that just living in Israel gave me, speaking Hebrew, living according to the Jewish year, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I wanted deeper engagement in Torah study. I wanted deeper engagement in prayer and practice. So I got back in. The questions or the sense that I had of not finding my place in the religious landscape, I was older and I said, I'll push my way in. If I have to push my way in, I'll push my way in. And I started going to and I ended up not having to, because I did find my place. It's there. It just took a little bit more look to discover it.
So this is a question that I probably never asked you, but I'll ask you. I mean, you're here in Israel. What when you were contemplating what academic institutions to go study for the rabbinate, obviously there were at least two here in Israel. One was HUC, the other is Schechter. Yet you chose to go back to the U.S. and enroll in Hebrew College in Boston, and say not go to JTS or American University, Jewish University in LA. So, what attracted you to Hebrew College?
A few things. Number one, I had been far away from home for a long
Boston.
time.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
It felt like a nice opportunity to be close to people who I had been far away from for a long time. And I also really appreciate the educational philosophy and the Jewish hashkafa of Hebrew College, which is that it's non-denominational. They don't belong to a movement. They're not the conservative movement. They're not the reform movement. They're deeply, deeply involved in text. The philosophy is, we're going to teach you how to have mastery of traditional Jewish texts, and what you bring to that, whether you go off to work in a reform synagogue and teach it according to a reform hashkafa, or if you go off to a conservative world, or if you go off to any other kind of world, that will be between you and your community. But the mastery of text, that's what you learn here. So it was a very uh it was an education with a lot of integrity towards Jewish sources, which is what I want.
And you are towards the end of your rabbinical education at Hebrew College in Boston. When is it an itch that you say, I want to go back to Israel and become a rabbi in Israel, or was it, okay, I'm going to look at, I hate to say it from a HR perspective, but I'm just going to start looking at the market and seeing where the opportunities may lie for me. Lay.
That was the plan. The plan was to look at the market and see where the opportunities lie. But
Lie,
we
exactly.
also,
Thank you for correcting me.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we do a year in Israel as part of our studies at Hebrew College.
Okay.
So in my third year, I came back to Israel. I came to Jerusalem. And the second I got off the plane, the Israel infatuation, the Israel bug was reignited in me. And truly that day I understood, this is where my mission is. This is where my rabbinate is. And yeah, and I started making calls that day because also it was a moment of panic because I had no idea
You have
if there
bills
are
to
job
pay.
opportunities,
Right.
where there are job opportunities. The American rabbinic job market is a little more known to me, not non-Orthodox job market, that is.
Hold that thought, because we're going to go into your experiences here in Israel. We'd like to take a short break at this point, and I'd like to play a short video of Rav Matti in a very familiar setting for him, actually. I don't know if he mentioned earlier that he was a preschool teacher, but here is Rav Matti, a short video showing kindergarten children of a kindergarten right next door to our synagogue how to blow the shofar.
Shalom. לכוון את זה למעלה, אולי לעמוד, בן שלי לא. אוקיי, עוד פעם, 1, 2, 3. אולי אם נבקש מהשופר ממש יפה, אולי נגיד, שופר בבקשה, תעשי לנו איזה צליל יפה. אוקיי, אז תגידו בבקשה. אוקיי, בואו נראה. 1, 2, 3. זה עבד. שלושה צלילים שעושים בראש השנה. הראשון זה תקיעה, וכמו ששמענו, זה צליל אחד ארוך. ואז יש עוד צליל שנקרא שברים, וזה 1, 2, 3 צלילים ביחד. להקשיב. ואז יש עוד אחד שנקרא תשועה, וזה כל מיני צלילים קטנים ביחד.
So, we're back. This is from Mount Carmel. This is Moriah, and we are here talking to Rabbi Matti Schultz, the rabbi of Kehilat Moriah in Haifa. And this was extraordinary, Rabbi Matti, seeing you in front of kids. We didn't show the kids, obviously. We were taping them from the back, but this is really part of who you are as a person, is it not? I mean, interacting, taking a little bit from your history of being a preschool teacher, but really interacting with the young generation and trying to give them a little bit of Yiddishkeit.
Well, the truth is, what do you do when you're a preschool teacher? You come in, you sit down on the rug, you have the kids sit in a circle, you sing some songs, you do story time, you usually look at the day of the week. And then everyone goes off to play. Some do building, some do Play-Doh, some do this, some do that. It's basically the same thing as synagogue. You bring people in, you sing some songs, you tell stories from the Torah, you talk about the day of the week, where we are in the Jewish calendar. And unfortunately, we don't have Play-Doh or blocks or anything like that. But other than that, I think there's really a connection between the two paths. Maybe the preschool kids are a little easier to manage, but other than that, some real similarities.
All right. So let's go back to, you arrive in Israel, you're looking for a job. How different is that experience for you now than it was in your first aliyah? Let's say now you're a toshav chozer, as we say in Hebrew, a returning Israeli, because you became an Israeli citizen when you first made aliyah. So now you're returning to Israel. You're returning with with an interesting profession, because here in Israel, conservative Judaism, Masorti Judaism, as we call it in Hebrew, is not the norm, and it's not exactly, it's tough. So compared the transition that you probably felt when you moved here for the second time,
compared to the first time that I moved
compared to the first time, and then suddenly here you are, you're a rabbi in a very, we don't have to talk about the maybe for our listeners who are, and our viewers who are not familiar with the intricacies of non-separation of church and state here in Israel, but here you are. You mentioned before that you're also part of the LGBTQ community, and you're a rabbi. Those are like, and a conservative congregation. In baseball we call that two strikes. So, so how do you approach Israel take two for when you came back?
I mean, it was a completely different moment, similar in some ways, but the first time I came, I really just dropped in, didn't have any real connections here, didn't speak a word of Hebrew, had no idea what or where or who or why of anything. So there was something tremendously overwhelming about that. The second time I came with more focus. So there was still a lot of unknown. Would I find a job? Where would I find a job? Where would I end up? What would it be like? But I had a sense of mission, and I knew what I was looking for. And luckily, I have a few contacts in Israel who are rabbis, so I was able to turn to them and have them point me to the people to talk to and the phone calls to make. So it was new and unfamiliar, but at least not as completely without framework as the first time I came.
So I know that when you were in Hebrew college, you were actually being mentored by a synagogue in the Boston area, and then here you get a call. Actually, you got a call from me, I think, the first time, and say, "Hey, Rabbi Schultz, this is so and so, and I'm the chairman of so and so, and we'd like to meet you. We'd like to see if you may be a fit for us." So when you first walked into Moriah on that Friday evening, forget all the interviews that we and the vetting that we did, but when you walked into, if we can call it a sanctuary, but you walked into our synagogue, what was the feeling? What was the first feeling that you got? And also compare that to maybe the institutional synagogue in the U.S. and the differences between that.
Well, first of all, I totally thought I blew it with that first phone call.
I don't even remember it, so don't worry. Must have not blown it.
You asked me why I went to Hebrew college, and I said I love their post-denominational approach, and you said, "Well,
Okay.
we're very denominational." And I was like, "Okay,
yes,
I already blew it. I already blew it."
Okay, yeah. Truth be told, yes.
I guess I recovered. When I walked in, I was struck by the beauty of the space. The sanctuary is windows on three sides, and beautiful greenery outside. And there's a moment in Pride and Prejudice where Lizzie Bennet walks into Darcy's home for the first time and goes, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to be mistress of all this?" And that's sort of her awakening to Darcy is really through the loveliness of his home, but as an expression of who he is. And that's what I felt. I thought, oh, it would be nice to be, wouldn't it be nice to be mistress of all this gorgeous, romantic synagogue tucked in the hills of the Carmel mountain. So that was the first I connected with the space first.
Mm-hmm. People second. Right. I mean, first impressions, obviously.
First impression, but you also know that
we first eat with our eyes and then we open our mouth and actually chew. So it's
aesthetics are important to me, as you know. But
yes, I know that very well. Yes. So your experience on the weekend obviously paid off because we hired you, we brought you on board. Now that you're a year into the job, almost a year, Is it what you expect? I mean, you said that when I called you and we talked, that I said we're very denominational. So do you find that Israel is on the spectrum of conservative Judaism, that we're more conservative than our cohorts in the U.S.?
Yes, but I think everything everything is tilted a little bit to the right on the religious spectrum in Israel. Reform also is a little right of American reform. Conservative is a little right of American conservative. Orthodoxy a little right of American. I don't know about that one,
Maybe.
but the other
Yeah.
two, I would definitely say so. Just in terms of being more, yeah, I don't know exactly how I would define it. And I actually think with Moriah, it's true and it's not true because, as you know, we really have people from all sides of every spectrum. It's
Right.
not all sides of the spectrum. It's all sides of every spectrum, of a
Right.
religious spectrum, of a political spectrum, of a temperament spectrum, and people have different approaches to prayer and to theology, and I think that's really the the beauty of the community.
And how difficult is it for you to perform your job as a rabbi here in Israel in a conservative synagogue? Because, obviously, just give you an example. If you were now in a congregation anywhere in the U.S. and a young couple would have come into your office, scheduled an appointment, and said, "Hey, we want to be married," you'd say, "Hey, okay." You'd open up the calendar and you say, "Let's go." How does that work here in Israel for you?
So I actually just had my first conversation with someone interested in getting married through our community since I've been here. That's a full year. Why has it been a full year since this has happened? Because most people opt out of marrying through conservative Judaism in Israel
Right.
because we cannot actually confer legal marriage onto somebody. That was something I had to say in this meeting. I can marry you in the eyes of the halakha, in the eyes of God. I cannot help you get married in the eyes of the
The state of Israel, right?
You'll have
Yes.
to hop on Zoom after the service and get married through some
A
clerk
judge in Utah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also there's also another aspect to this, and because again, as you said, you can't marry them, and you can't marry a young couple here under the eyes of in the eyes of the government. But there's also strict penalties, if I'm not mistaken, if you're caught marrying a couple.
Exactly. I hopped when this person who is getting married reached out to me. I hopped on the phone with someone from the movement, and I said, "Someone's approached me about a wedding. What do I need to tell them? What's the protocol? Fill me in so I can be helpful." And she informed me, just so you know, there is technically a potential 2-year stint in jail for performing this.
Potentially, right? Yeah. But you don't want to test the envelope, or do you want to test the envelope? Is that something that you say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to marry this couple by hook or by crook"?
Well, first of all, she said that it doesn't actually happen. You won't actually be thrown in jail. But I do believe, and I would imagine that most conservative rabbis would say something similar, that the fight for religious freedom in Israel is worth taking the risk.
And does this only from what you've seen? I kind of know the answer, but we'll share your answer with our audience. And do you see this also in other life cycle events, or is it just something that's strictly focused on marriage?
Yes,
Let's take burial, for instance.
This was very surprising to me as someone who comes from the American Jewish world to see that unfortunately we've had a number of funerals in this past year, and I was shocked to discover that you don't get to bring your rabbi to officiate your loved one's funeral. There's a city-run Chevra Kadisha. They run the show. You show up on the day of, and and you hope there's someone there who's understanding and will let you run part of the service. We had good luck with that this year, but if for a female rabbi, it would have been a non-starter, and um, that's a really hard thing. That's a really hard thing because you want the person conducting your life cycle moments to be someone who knows your family.
Right.
I also think it's important to mark that sometimes in the States, people go bankrupt trying to afford a Jewish funeral for
Burial. Right.
ones. And there is also the flip side of this difficult thing with the Chevra Kadisha is that you get your Jewish burial as a benefit
Right.
of living in a Jewish
Even
state.
even though even here it does cost money, and if you want to be buried in a certain way, it costs you more. But yeah, I mean, but you're right. You know, the Israelis are Jews are granted the right to almost a free burial
Mhm.
if they need to. Rav Matti, I really, it's amazing, but we're quickly running out of time, and I'm going to extend this program just by a few minutes, even though I wanted to keep it at a certain time. But this conversation is interesting, um, and I think that our audience is learning a lot, not only about you but also about conservative Judaism here in Israel. One of the striking issues that you probably you came across is the fact that when you come into an Israeli conservative synagogue or even an Orthodox synagogue, you're pretty much a one-man show. You know, if you were to go to a synagogue in the U.S. right now, you'd have an executive director, you'd have custodians, you'd have, a secretary, you'd have an educational director, you'd have, all of the building blocks that make that build a congregation in the U.S. Here, it's different. How do you adjust to that, having come from a place where I don't want to say everything is done for you, but you have a much larger supporting cast to help you do your job.
Yeah, so I think this is what you're saying is true and not true.
Okay, explain.
Yes. There's all those there's a big staff at an American synagogue. That's definitely true. And here after an event we're the ones stacking the chairs and clearing the plates, and that might
Washing the
be
dishes.
washing the dishes. That might not be the case in an American synagogue where you have people cleaning up and locking up and sort of running the facilities aspect of things. But I don't feel like a one man show for a number of reasons. When it comes to prayer and Torah reading, we have an amazing staff of lay leadership.
Volunteers, right? Hmm.
And a lot of times you don't see, sometimes you see that in American synagogues. You're very lucky
Right.
when you see that in American synagogues. I think you're lucky when you see it anywhere. It's an incredible
So,
blessing.
so, so my answer to that, Rav Mati, is that we have a staff of 120 families, and we can
Yeah.
call on
Yeah.
each one of them anytime we want. Know that we could have continued this conversation probably for another hour, but we need to leave people wanting more, and I'm sure that we will have more opportunities to talk to you, not just general conversation like this, but dig deep into your profession of rabbi, and God knows we have a lot of holidays in Israel, and we have a lot of
Mhm.
things that we can talk about on that front as well. But I would like to do a lightning round, kind of a get to know you type of a
Mhm.
question, a round robin of questions. You've been in Haifa for almost a year. What's your favorite hangout spot?
Lately, my favorite hangout spot is the climbing wall. When I hang up my rabbi hat at the end of the day, I put on my climbing shoes and I go to
Okay,
the Performance Rock
I
in.
thought it was running, but okay, you taught me something new.
I gave up on running. It wasn't.
Okay.
It, it didn't offer the same thrill as the climb.
That's because you're not running with me, but that's okay. So climbing. Your favorite Jewish holiday, and how is it different than celebrating that holiday here than say in the States?
I think my favorite Jewish holiday might be Shavuot because May that's biased because we just had it, so it's on my mind. But I love that it's a learning holiday. Um,
And do you like the fact that here in Israel it's kind of celebrated secularly a little different than, say, you would celebrate it in the United States?
yeah, I think it's beautiful that all sorts of organizations have a tikkun and take it in whatever direction they want to take it. And I've seen some tikkunim that are purely secular, some that are purely religious, and some that are a nice mix.
And for any one of our viewers who may be contemplating a visit to Haifa, any place you recommend that they go eat? One of your favorite? What has tickled your palate here in Haifa? And you can
What?
also say your own home. That's okay.
Yeah, but then am I recommending that anyone who comes to Haifa is coming
Yeah.
over for a meal?
Yes, and by the way, we do have this program where we do invite people for Shabbat dinners. So here you're just you've just offered up your house for any guest coming to Haifa. You're invited to Rav Matti's home for Shabbat. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in this case, I'll have to say my home. One thing that we've said, me and my partner Yoav, one of the big differences between Haifa and Tel Aviv is that in Haifa, the domestic domain reigns supreme. In Tel Aviv, you're always going out. In Haifa, you might have a little more space in your apartment. You invest a little more in decorating it, and we definitely cook more, bake more, and enjoy eating at home.
If you have the urge to go and have a cup of coffee somewhere, would you go have a cup of coffee on the Carmel somewhere, or would you go down to the beach to, say, a neighborhood like Bat Galim?
Um, I love a trip to Bat Galim, despite the long bus ride. But I think my favorite coffee place is right here, Cafe Silva. I
So you
love
just
that
plug them. We have to go get a commercial spot from them. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I love that they're 24 hours, even though lately I don't avail myself of the late hours as much as when I first arrived and was jet lagged. But I really think every city needs a 24-hour coffee place. It should be subsidized by the city. It's a public good.
And one last question. If you weren't a rabbi, if you didn't choose this path, what do you think you'd be doing today?
I'd be perhaps a professional rock climber, like that crazy guy in those documentaries that scales the sides of buildings.
So rock climbing would have been where you're at. Okay, good. So
I don't think so, really. It's just my obsession of the week, but
Okay.
let's go.
We'll go with that. So we'll go with rock climbing. So Rav Matti, I'd like to really thank you for joining me here on the podcast number 2 of From Mount Carmel. This is Moriah. And on this note, we bring another episode to a close. And again, a very, very special thank you to Rabbi Matti Schultz for joining us, for sharing his journey, his vision for Jewish life in Israel and Haifa, and his thoughts upon the evolving relationship, or his experiences actually, between conservative Judaism in Israel and the U.S. and the diaspora. So from the streets of Haifa to Jewish communities around the world, our goal is in this podcast to create conversations that connect us to traditions, to community, and to each other. So if you've enjoyed tonight's or today's episode, whenever you're watching this, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We urge you to share this podcast with friends, and be sure to follow Moriah Congregation online for more conversations, more programs, and community events. And especially if you are in the area in Haifa, Israel, please drop by, come spend the Shabbat with us. We guarantee you an experience that you will not forget. So, in closing, this show was produced by Nicole Cutler, and I was your host. As Rav Matti said, I'm Eitan Kushner. I'm chair of Moriah Congregation. And until our next podcast, we'd like to thank you for tuning in, and we wish you all shalom from Haifa.